And Bonnie Jean Blackmore lives in Hawaii, lucky her. She contacted the programme recently to tell us about a letter that she had in her possession and the story it subsequently revealed about her Scottish roots.
Cluny Castle, Kingussie, North Britain, July the 1st, 1891. My dear Mrs. McEwan, I have much pleasure in informing you that your claim for pension has been allowed by the United States government. Papers for you to sign will reach you in the course of a few days. You had better go with them to Mr. Wallace Bruce, United States Consul at Edinburgh, and he will see that you sign them properly.
The Carnegie Letter is a letter that was written to my great-great-grandmother, Margaret McEwan, awarding her a pension for her dead husband who went to the U.S. to fight in the Civil War on foreign soil for the freedom of his fellow man, regardless of the color of his skin. His name is John McEwan. He was born in Blackford, but in 1862, he enlisted in the 65th Illinois Regiment. He fought in the Civil War. He contracted smallpox when he moved back to Scotland. He was a weaver in Dalkeith, and he met Margaret there. She was a weaver as well. I do know that he had a sword and he had his Civil War rifle with him. And at the end, when he couldn't afford to pay for his sickness, he offered the doctor his sword. And the doctor refused and said he wouldn't take the sword, but that he would, that he would help them. And then when John finally died, his sword and his rifle were found next to him in the bed. So he died with his relics. When he died, they had no money. She had no money at all. And they were going to end up in the poorhouse. And that was when Margaret appealed to Wallace Bruce, who was the consul at the time in Edinburgh, and he encouraged her to write to Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie, after hearing her story and after them providing all of the documents necessary, he wrote her a letter to let her know that she was being awarded the pension for her husband.
You will get hereafter about $12 per month, say £2 10 shillings. Your first payment will be about £22, as the pension begins from the date of your claim, September the 3rd, 1890. Had your husband fought as a private soldier for his own country and broken down in health in consequence, he would probably have been allowed to die in a poorhouse, and you and your children would have been left uncared for. The United States keeps in comfort all their days the private soldier and his widow. This is one of the many differences between a monarchy and a republic. The monarchy bestows its great reward upon the few, the republic upon all those who serve it. One is the government of a class, the other the government of the people. With best wishes, I am respectfully, Andrew Carnegie.
July 7th, 1891, 5 St. John's Hill, Edinburgh. Mr. Carnegie, dear sir, I received your very welcome letter today, and the papers which I had to sign. I got them on Saturday. I went with them to Mr. Bruce today, and I have just now come back after having signed them. For, dear sir, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the trouble and bother you have gone to on my account, more especially as you had not been in the army yourself. I was crying with grief and worry when I wrote to you the first time, and I cried with joy and thankfulness when I got your letter on Friday. Mr. Carnegie, you have kept your word nobly to me, and may God bless both of you and your dear wife with long life and happiness. I am glad to know that Mrs. Carnegie is in good health again. I had the pleasure of seeing you both when you laid the foundation stone of the library. When I got the letter, I wished that he who fought and suffered had lived to see what his country had not forsaken him. For, sir, although he was a Scotsman by birth, he was a true American in his heart and soul. My family join with me in wishing you that peace that comes from every kindly interaction. I am yours, very gratefully, Margaret McEwan.
After she was granted the pension and she got her first pension check, they had taken taxes out of it. And she wrote back a very scathing letter to Andrew Carnegie saying basically that the United States had robbed her. And she wrote this letter and pretty much demanded that she get reimbursed for the tax money that they had taken out. And she got it. They gave it to her.
What do these artifacts mean to you?
Well, that would make me a little emotional, I think. I have a book that was given to me when my mother died in 2003. It's called The Birthday Oracle. The inscription on the inside of it says, "To Kate from Miss Hodge on May 2nd, 1901, Edinburgh, Scotland." That was the only thing that I had, the only strand that I had of my relatives. I didn't know who was who. All I had was basically first names in the book and dates. So I tried to match them up, and I wasn't having any luck doing that. And for some reason, my 96-year-old father was going through some papers and pulled out a manila file that had these photos of my relatives, my ancestors, had the letter. All of those things came to me quite unsolicited and quite by surprise. And when I opened them, it was opening up the grave to my relatives. It brought them into my life and gave me the opportunity to set my plans to go and see where they live, because I never really had any idea that I had even Scottish roots. So now I do. Now I'm one of you.
That's Bonnie Jean Blackmore speaking there to Laura Seawright. And incidentally, not long after Margaret McEwan was awarded the pension, they changed the law so that to draw it you had to live in the US. So she upped and left Scotland for Chicago with her children. Well, what I also found fascinating, Bruce, is that Wallace Bruce, the Consul General, started a campaign to raise money for a monument dedicated to the Scottish men who fought in this foreign war, with contributions from Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Carnegie and more. And that was unveiled August 21st, 1893 on Calton Hill in Edinburgh.
Yes, Wallace Bruce, by the way, wonder how he got the job as consul.
That's a great name. Couldn't have a more Scotch name.
You could not. Well, what a nice chap, by the way, and also what a fabulous monument. It's a wonderful monument. One of my favourites. It's actually in the Old Calton Cemetery, just along the road from
Never noticed it.
No, nobody goes there now. And do you know something? It's the only statue of Abraham Lincoln in Scotland, and it's the only memorial in the world to the American Civil War outside the USA.
It's
quite a spectacular thing. One of the Scots memorialised in there, William Duff, he's actually buried under it. The rest are nearby, including Sargeant Major McEwan. And in fact, I found a wee bit in the Edinburgh Town Council records with the magistrates and council having received a letter from Wallace Bruce in 1892 signifying their approval of his proposal that a burying ground be provided, etc. And it all happened because Margaret wrote to the United States government to complain.
It's an amazing story. Bonnie also told us that Wallace Bruce actually wrote a poem to be read at the unveiling ceremony in 1893 called Columbia's Garland. It's quite long, actually. I'll just give you a wee bit of it. Another clasp of loving hands, another link across the sea, a living word from distant lands to grace the soldiers of the free. Columbia at her mother's knee unfolds the scroll of liberty. That's knee and liberty rhyming there. The story goes, the weather was terrible, nothing new there. The ceremony was cut short, and that poem was never read. And Bonnie is planning a trip to get over here, and at the end of that visit, intends to be standing on those very steps on that anniversary, the 21st of August, to read the poem aloud that never got read that day 119 years ago.
Well, I've a good mind to be there with her, if that's all right with Bonnie. I'll come and stand by her shoulder while she reads the poem.
Maybe give you a stanza or two to read out yourself.